Hello everyone, my name is Moji. You're watching a Bitcoin Bubble News channel. Maybe as a base goal for Bitcoin, when does Bitcoin need to reevaluate whether it's peaking? When its value goes over the value of gold above ground today. There you have it, 16 trillion crypto family. Thanks for coming back to the show. Tom Lee told you that Bitcoin is still cheap and will stay cheap until it at least goes up to the value of gold on the market. Today's clip is an interview that Tom Lee just did. In it, he talks about his prediction that Bitcoin will be worth $150,000 by the end of the year and where he thinks Bitcoin is going next, where he thinks BTC will be going in 2025 and beyond. Because the dollar has lost so much worth, he also talks about how the poor are getting poorer and the rich are getting richer in the United States. In it, he talks about what's going on and how Bitcoin can help. That being said, I think you should watch this whole thing. This clip has a lot of useful knowledge. Tell us what you think in the area below. Let's watch the clip for today. On the one hand, I'd like to say that I believe in the longer-term price more than the shorter-term price. Because facts aren't the only things that affect the price of something on the market in the short term. And, for example, what's going on in Germany and with MT? Gox right now is making short-term problems and might even break technical patterns, but it won't change where Bitcoin will be in 5 years. But the $150,000 price goal comes from work done by Sean Farrell, who is our head of digital strategy. He is looking at a model that is a mix of what looks like a stock-to-flow model and a price-to-book model. How much does it cost to make Bitcoin? At what point does it break even? What multiple should you give that? He figures that it will be about $150,000 by the end of the year. I also think that's pretty doable. Basically, it will only happen if the SP can keep going up until the end of the year, which is what we expect to happen. Also, someone wants to know why they should care about Bitcoin. Let's say that some people are listening and are interested, but they're not sure if they should buy any. That question seems to have been answered a long time ago since Bitcoin is now a real asset class. BlackRock, the biggest asset manager in the world, backs it. Be sure to talk about how important Bitcoin is to BlackRock's future, which is something they want their clients to do. This is what I think people who are interested in Bitcoin might do wrong. They might think they have to put all of their money into it. They only need to put in 5% or 2%. Also, if someone keeps their cash on hand, that's like the interest they would have earned in a year. They only need to set aside time for crypto. When we first wrote about Bitcoin, we told them to put 1 to 2%. That suggestion would make up 80% of their portfolio today if they didn't adjust it. So it's been a huge win for our clients, and many have told us that putting 2% of their money into crypto was what they thought was a low-risk bet that changed their lives. That's how I think people should see it now since Bitcoin isn't. It hasn't caught on with many people yet. Some people are still not sure about Bitcoin, and many banks are not letting their customers use exchange forms of the currency. So the ETF isn't even okay with many companies right now. And that tells me there are still a lot of people who want to hold crypto. Someone today might be wrong to think that Bitcoin isn't important because it works really well for wealthy Americans in the US. But even in the US, I think only 45% of people have a bank account and another 25% use prepaid credit cards and debit cards as their main way to pay for things. American banks are very pricey, and this is in one of the richest countries in the world. People outside of the US will find crypto to be a much cheaper way to bank, especially if they want to send money to other countries. Maybe as a basic goal for Bitcoin, hey, when does Bitcoin have to reevaluate whether it's peaking? When the value of Bitcoin is higher than the value of gold above ground today. 16 trillion is the number. I think that's a good measure because, gold may be used in some industries and for jewelry, but the main reason it's worth $16 trillion is that it's seen as a unique way to protect against currencies and disasters. And I think Bitcoin is much more reliable and useful if we ever need to start using gold. If you try to carry $1 million worth of gold, in other words, I need a few friends to help me carry that. It's possible to carry $1 million worth of Bitcoin on your person or in your head if you can remember your address. So I think it's a much better way to protect against disaster. On top of that, it can be used for other things too. In fact, it's possible that it will be used a lot over time, maybe not for direct payments, but as a type of security. So I don't know. So it will be a lot more than what gold is worth now, but I think 16 trillion seems like a realistic goal. A lot of things are not fair. As you say, it's not fair because people who own assets lend money or are long on assets are the ones who profit. That does mean. Also, Bitcoin has been the best way to protect against inflation so far, right? If you look at the Walmart bill next to the price of Bitcoin, you can see that Bitcoin has done much better than anything else and would have been a good hedge. But I've heard the same thing about how unhappy 40% of the country is for as long as I've been filing markets. And based on what you think is a normal budget for people, the Federal Reserve's study of consumer finances shows that about half of the country lives from paycheck to paycheck. They have never, in fact, 40% of American families receive net transfers from the government. So they don't really pay taxes. Instead, they get money, like food stamps or other forms of help. Unfortunately, America has always had this split where about half of the country doesn't pay taxes because they get transfer payments. I believe that people who post these things are getting a loud voice, which is great. I wish there was a way to make people hurt less. But that's always been the case. People make the mistake of thinking that they need to come up with $63,000 to buy a whole Bitcoin. They may be able to buy a Satoshi instead of a latte every day. What's more, if Bitcoin network value works out in Bitcoin, let's use Uran's number, but let's say Bitcoin is 1 million. Okay, so it goes up by 20 times from here. For those who are long Bitcoin, inflation won't matter. That's the important thing, because all it means is that the dollar is less valuable. It's not. That's really what they're going through.